But I didn't want this comment to fly by. You said that a lot of the social sciences was a little bit superficial. Can you open up on that a little bit more
Well, I think you know my
without getting you in trouble, of course?
I think the reality is that a lot of social theory is was devised by white European men who kind of based it on an interpretation. It's a sort of generalization of interpretations of European and Western history, European and Western economic development, European and Western political development. And then the next step is just to say, well, everything else is just the same, basically. You look at economics. Economics is all about markets and prices and property rights and etc.
Hmm.
And so then you get this very elaborate sort of construction of economic theory, and then it's sort of like that everything is the same, like the rest of the world, it's the same. But that's a
Hmm.
kind of ludicrous thing, because anyone
You
who
can never account for all the variables, right? Your model is always going to be missing some crucial variables.
well, it's not just that. It's just that African economies, for example, historically were organized in fundamentally different ways. They were not organized like Western market. Property rights were different,
No.
exchange was different, notions of value were different. Like the whole thing is different.
Hmm.
If you constructed economic theory based on knowledge of Africa, you'd have come up with an economic theory that looked completely different from the type of economic theory that people developed in 19th century or 20th century England. So,
Yeah.
so how generalizable is that understanding of the world? And think about politics. Like we have this idea of the way political institutions work, and what legitimate authority looks like, and what to worry about. But if you look at China or the history of political theory in China, that looks totally different. Okay, so
Mm.
who's right? We're right and they're wrong. Maybe
Hmm.
like I just so I think that we don't really have a very sophisticated comparative understanding of social science, in my view, which
Mm.
means that taking Western ideas and sort of going to Africa with all these ideas in your head about how things should work and what that's a very confusing experience for me, and that was a
Yeah.
very confusing experience for me, and it's been a big learning exercise. I would
Uh-huh.
say, yeah.
What you're describing so well is Nassim Taleb's Procrustean bed metaphor. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, yes.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to say it in
It's
case
one
the
of the
people don't.
labors of Theseus, isn't it? Or I don't know if they were labors, but it's when Theseus is trying to get back to Athens, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and he stays in the Inn of Procrustes, and then I mean, but basically the idea that you're explaining how the European white men came up with this sort of model for how
Yeah,
Africa works, rather than letting the reality shape their model, they tried fitting reality into their
yeah, exactly.
predetermined
It's what
model.
there's a lot of what social psychologists call motivated reasoning. Like you have a model of the world, and then you process information in a way to reconfirm your model of the world. I feel like there's a lot of research on Africa like that, and so
Yeah.
so so you know so I've been trying to sort of deprogram myself. I would say for the for the
How's that going?
I think it's
Is it starting to like
I've made
push
some
against?
progress. I've made some progress, I should say. I've made some progress on that, but it's very
Mm.
difficult. You come with all these preconceptions about how the world works. You're having grown up in Western countries or whatever, and
Yeah.
and 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 so you have to really be open to think about things in a very different way. Like nowadays, even when I'm teaching, whenever I'm teaching things, I'm teaching these PhD students at the moment. I just try to question everything I say to them. Is that right?
Right.
Like I think that's what you have to do. You just have to endlessly challenge yourself.